Before proceeding to our next kick, I want to quickly introduce a concept that's used in all of the Russian system of mobility work. And that's the notion that the body has three fundamental planes of motion. If you think of yourself as standing in a cube in a room, I can take any joint or any aspect of my body, and I can either make a circle on the wall in front of me, as if I had, for example, a pencil on the tip of my toe. I can make a circle on the wall in front of me. I can make a circle to the walls to either side, as if I had a pencil coming out of the side of my ankle. I can do that in either direction. And then finally I can make a circle on the floor and the ceiling, as if I was stirring on the ground. So whenever we talk about joint health, recuperation, or wellness work, we'll often address every single joint by making a so-called frontal plane rotation in either direction, and then progressing to figure eights, and then making a medial plane rotation to the side to whatever the capacity of the joint is. Or with an elbow you can see that it'll be limited, but we'll work it, or with a full arm. And then finally we can address the sort of horizontal plane as if we're making a circle on the ceiling. And that can be done with any joint in all three planes of movement. From that natural movement, we see that a lot of the Slavic motions with the leg, they evolve, right? So we can start by making that initial rotation on the ground, rotation on the frontal wall, and then the rotation on the lateral walls. And as we link them, we start to get into that kind of figure eight motion. For the purposes of this DVD series, what we're looking at really is the most functional, street applicable or military type strikes that we can use. So we won't be addressing some of the more definitive heel flexions and complex kicks, but they all evolve from the same mechanics. So after those straight thrusting kicks that we've delivered, the next kick we're looking at is a so-called cut kick. So a cut kick very closely resembles a Muay Thai kick. Key distinctions for us is that oftentimes in styles that kick with the shin, there's an emphasis on kicking with the center blade of the shin. And so there's a lot of conditioning that can be done, kicking, cement bags, palm trees, using rolling pins or sticks on the shin. Combat systemic perspective is that first and foremost the responsibility is to your own well-being. So we don't ever want any of our training methodologies to certainly sacrifice a degree of our health in exchange for possible long-term self-defense gain. So we don't want to, cause damage to our bones, risk getting arthritis, varicose veins, all that stuff, just on the outside chance that that extra conditioning might give us something combatively. First and foremost, we want to make sure it's healthy for us now and that it gives us sufficient combative gains. To that end, we generally do not strike with that center plane of the shin, but rather look to use the softer outer muscle from the mid to the outside. So a Muay Thai guy might immediately argue that that's less durable, can't be conditioned as well, and we'll be the first to admit that's true, but we're never looking for that full one-shot, one-kill kind of power. System is much more about a victory of inches, piece by piece, never biting off more than you can chew, and stealing structure and breaking the person down rather than looking for that one singular whump. Right? So when we get into our strike, first way we can look at it is from our pivot. Because our pivot now is closely connected to the tool itself, we can look at just placing our leg inside and pivoting until we have alignment with that outer meat of the shin. Standing off a little bit on angle right there. That alignment right there. And so that's the first mechanic we're looking for. Once that gets comfortable, we see we can tap. We can just lift that off the ground and just allow that to deliver. A cut kick is generally going to be delivered to the inside of the ankle or sometimes the inside of the thigh. It's rarely delivered much higher than that. We want a strike that can work for anyone right away, very effortlessly from that stance. Again, just like with the thrust kick, I can allow my structure to be rear loaded at first, and I see how my leg can just whip out. Now, if we use this line in the mat right here, I'm just going to move you back for a second. If I think of this line in the mat, one of the cardinal rules of biomechanics is that any rotation that occurs with my leg on that hemisphere, on that side, does not require a pivot from my support leg. But as soon as I begin to migrate past my own center line, this line right here in the mat, then it's at that point that I start to put more shear on my meniscus and my lateral ligaments. So that's why you'll see in a lot of the traditional Cossack work, there'll be motions on one side, as a study of motion and mobility, but as soon as it crosses over, this is where it necessitates a pivot. And that pivot allows me now to put less strain on my support leg and to move more freely. So what that means is I'm going to deliver a cut kick. I never want to have my support leg directly towards my opponent like this where the shear's on the meniscus. I want at minimum to toe open, so that gives me a larger berth for my leg, and ideally to allow that to pivot. So as that leg crosses the center line, I want to think of pivot, 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 pivot. So I'm hiccuping on my support leg. So I bring Danny back in here now. What I see is if my toe was sufficiently open, I can comfortably deliver a kick like this, right? Very little effort. If I load my back heel, now I have an even greater range with the counterbalance of my body. And the more I pivot this over, the longer my range becomes. Loaded, I pivot it over, and I deliver. It's sufficient at first. Again, we begin loaded back, then I front load my stance. I can then pivot my carriage, sometimes referred to as pedal work. It's like we're oscillating between one pedal and another, where I pivot my lower carriage first, and then once it's comfortable, I should arrive pivoted as I kick. So all that power I'm generating is coming through here. So I'll get Danny just to grab a mitt, and I'll put you up just a bit on an angle so you can see. So again, step one, see what it's like if I deliver a kick with my back heel down and my toes fairly forward. Very limited range of motion. That puts all the demand on my front hip. And if I go any further, it starts to add strain on my support meniscus. Then all I need to do is simply toe open with my rear leg. And that's going to give me a much wider berth. Before I could only really comfortably cross to about here with my kick. Now I can comfortably cross to about here. So if I don't have that mobility in my hips and my knees, toe open more. And then I can look, if I stand conventionally in this kind of a stance, it's just a simple matter of pivoting my heel into here. And now I have that motion right across my body without any functional pivot during the motion. If it becomes comfortable and I have that degree of wellness, then I can deliver the hips first to get used to it, and the legs second. And then when it's all married together, it's the hip and the humping action of the tailbone that delivers that power. And then I can start to work on just stepping and displacing naturally. Right? Even at the least athletic level, if I think of myself as walking, when I walk there's a transfer of weight, step past that opponent, and deliver the leg. So again, I could be in a conversational stance, step past, and deliver with great power. What I want you to notice is that I'm not impacting with my shin, it's the outer meat. I'm not hitting and retracting. It's almost like I want to occupy the space he's in. So I just step, and I go down. And if I do retract, it's never to the point of origin. I'm not trying to stand my ground, but rather I want to move in any position I wish. This way, when I have those mechanics, even if I'm extremely close, I can generate significant push with very little space. Another thing to look at as well, oftentimes in Muay Thai, you'll see this type of counter torque being delivered with the arm. While that's not necessarily bad in a sportive environment, mechanically what we're looking to do is isolate the center. We don't need to add stress to our spine in order to do that. And combatively, I don't want to make my face more vulnerable. If I'm fighting, I want it to be independent of my upper carriage. So my hands can stay shielded without any requirement for them to move. I could have them anywhere. They're not even required. So the motion again, originating in the hip, terminating in the kick, and ideally terminating the pivot at the same time as the kick.